Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we explore the real stories behind business journeys, the highs, the lows, the lessons, and the breakthroughs that define the entrepreneurial path. In this episode, I'm joined by Nicky Billou, a thought leadership expert, best-selling author, and founder of eCircle Academy. Nicky's built his career helping coaches, consultants, and business owners transform from hidden experts into recognized authorities in their fields. An immigrant who fled Iran with his family in search of freedom, Nicky's story is one of resilience, reinvention, and purpose. His mission is to help others achieve that same freedom, not just financially, but emotionally and creatively by embracing their voice, mastering their message, and serving their audience with authenticity and heart. We'll talk today about his entrepreneurial journey, the mindset shifts that helped him overcome self-doubt, and how he builds a business dedicated to empowering others. Then we'll dive into his insights on positioning, podcast guesting, and what he calls selling as an act of love. If you've ever struggled to put yourself out there or wondered how to turn your expertise into real impact, this conversation will give you both inspiration and strategy. My conversation with Nicky Billou begins right now. Stick around. Nicky Billou, welcome. Thanks for being my guest today.
Mike Conrad, thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Tell me about your journey from immigrating to the West to eventually becoming an entrepreneur. I mean, that didn't happen easily, and just fill me in on the background.
Sure. Well, as you said, I'm originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. When I was 11 years old, the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran, and there were literal gun battles in the streets near my home. And my mom and dad were freaking out about that, but the freak out factor went out 1,000-fold when one day an object just crashed through our living room window and landed right next to my feet. Now I'm a kid, right? I don't know what the hell it is. It was this bottle with some liquid in it and a burning wick. Well, my dad knew what it was, a Molotov cocktail. He grabbed it and pulled out the wick so it didn't explode. That's the only reason you and I are still talking. He turns the bottle over. There's a note taped to it, and it says in Farsi, "Die, Christian scum." And
Wow.
My mom and dad at that point went, "That's it. We're out of here." So it took them a couple years, but they made a plan. They got us out of Tehran to Europe, to Athens, Greece. And then it took a couple more years, and they got us out of Greece to Toronto, Canada, where I now live. Now, Mike, I'm sure you can relate. I was a kid. I didn't want to leave my home or my friends. But as time went by, I could see the nobility of my mom and dad's sacrifice. They left behind everyone and everything they knew for a chance at a better life for me and my two brothers. And I could see that they took us from a legacy of tyranny to a legacy of freedom. Now, Mike, I believe inside every human breast beats the living heart of freedom. Every man and woman on this planet yearns to breathe free, to march to the tune of their own drummer, to chart their own course. And I could see that if you're an entrepreneur, this matters to you more than anyone. Without freedom, there's no free thought. Without free thought, there's no free expression. Without free expression, there's no free enterprise. And that means that you as an entrepreneur will have to rely on the favor of a tyrant rather than on the beautiful opportunities that God Almighty in His infinite wisdom has sought to make available. And I decided to become an entrepreneur because my late father was an entrepreneur. Mike, if you met him, you'd love this man. If you were his friend and you needed a job, he'd sit you in his office, he'd clear his calendar, he'd call all his buddies until he got you a job. If you were his friend, you were trying to start a business, he'd clear his calendar, sit you in his office, and give you his best advice and best connections. If you were his friend and you needed some more money to buy a car or a house, and Iran as a second world country wouldn't always give you all the money you needed to buy a car and a house from the bank, you'd go up to him and you'd go, Mr. Billou, Napoleon, I need some money to buy this car, this house. I need 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. He just writes you a check so you could go do that. And then when you tried to come and pay him back, he'd say, "No, come on, what are you doing? That was a gift, not a loan." And people would get upset. They'd go, "Come on, there has to be a loan. You can't give this much money as a gift." And he said, "Don't insult me." And he'd go, "Okay, but what am I supposed to do with all this money I've saved up?" And he'd look at him and he'd say, "Go find someone who's as badly off as you were when you came to see me and give it to them." Now, Mike, people always tell me, they go, "Listen, man, your dad sounds like a mythical figure. I mean, nobody's really like that, right?" And I go, no, man. There's lots of people like that. And my dad was one of them. They said, "Why would he do that? What's the percentage in it for him?" And I said, "Great question." Well, first and foremost, he was a devout and committed Christian. He believed in his bones that he'd been blessed by his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and God Almighty, and it was his duty to share those blessings with his fellow man. But secondly, he did it because he could. And me, I wanted to be like my father. My father was a man that just loved on people and believed in them. He'd tell me every day, "Son, that man in front of you, he's lost faith in himself. It's your job to restore his belief in himself." And he said, "That's going to happen to you too, and to me. Everybody's going to lose faith in themselves once in a while. And the only thing that'll give that faith back is someone else seeing their greatness and reminding them of it." And so, Mike, like, you've been very kind to mention some of my accolades and credentials. And, I'm very proud of them. But what I'm most proud of is I'm Napoleon Billou's son, and I believe in people.
That's amazing. You and I share a little bit of an overlap. My parents are immigrants to this country from Europe. I was born here, so I'm first generation American. You came here as a young person, I assume, based on how old you look and knowing when the Iranian Revolution. Revolution's a funny name. It was definitely a revolution, but it seemed like a reverse evolution. When it was all over.
Devolution.
Yeah, exactly. A good friend of mine who's from Iran, who's been here for years, was a pilot, a first officer, actually a flight engineer. Back in the day, there were 3 pilots on commercial aircraft. He was a flight engineer sitting behind the pilot and the first officer on Iran Air. And they flew from Tehran to New York. And he got off the plane for, the layover and declared, "I'm here, refugee status," and was allowed to stay and I can't say never went back. He eventually, once he became a U.S. citizen, now he goes back regularly. He can no longer bring his kids back there because the male kids back there, once they turn, 16 or 18 or whatever, then, they have to do compulsory military service. But his family still lives there and all that. But he did the one way of a round trip flight and found himself here and took advantage of that, to his credit. And he also is an entrepreneur. I think I don't think immigrants or the children of immigrants have an exclusive ability to become entrepreneurs, but I think we are disproportionately entrepreneurs. There's something about landing in a new country or being exposed to parents who came from another country, which was my case, who heard of how it was and just seeing the possibilities on my parents' eyes, particularly my father, just falling in love with the American dream, embracing the American dream. Now, he did not become an entrepreneur, although later in life, when he retired, he bought a small company and ran that for a few years. That was his American dream. But just seeing the possibility and just the perseverance in everything, because certainly immigrants, while this country, today it's a little bit more difficult to say, but historically this country has been accepting of immigrants and overall welcoming immigrants, but you're still disadvantaged to a certain degree. as an immigrant. And he didn't see that. He was, the moment he stepped foot on this land, he was an American as far as he was concerned. With an accent and all of that, but he was like American first, and was so grateful for the opportunities, and that got passed on to me. And I think it's really easy when you live in a country like this country or Canada, same thing, that that we take for granted certain things that other countries only can yearn for, and I do think both Canada and the United States share in it's yours to succeed and it's yours to fail. It's the government doesn't throw an unnecessary amount of obstacles your way. I mean, clearly there's red tape, clearly there's regulations. There's always that stuff, taxes and all that. But we're not immediately systematically set up to fail in Western countries as we might be in other countries. We're relying on other countries, many other countries, government bribes or who you know, or the status of your family name, the political party you belong to. That pretty much sets your chances. And I think here it's in North America anyway, and most Western countries, it's much closer to a clean slate. Anyone can do it. It's not systematically set against any particular group. And I do love the whole immigrant story. I think our country certainly, and certainly Canada, was built on that. And who isn't the child or grandchild or great grandchild or great great grandchild of an immigrant, right? It's how these countries are built. You often describe your father as your first entrepreneurial role model. What lessons did he teach you about business and freedom?
Well, the first thing that Dad taught me was how to be a good human being, because to my dad, all business was personal. A lot of people would say, oh, it's not personal, it's only business. And my dad would say, no. All business is personal to me. And I do business with people that I like, I love. And I learned that from him. And inside of my company, we curate our clients. I mean, we want people that are really great. And that's really, really important to us. And we look for good people to be of service to. I'll tell you a story. So I had a client several years ago when he was a young guy, and he was a personal fitness coach. And when I met him, he was failing at his business. He had 7 clients. He was making $1,200 a month, and they lived in Toronto. And Toronto's the New York City of Canada. So $1,200 a month doesn't cut it your bad.
Right.
Not even close. So he came to me because I had a friend of his as a client. And he said, you help this guy, you think he can help me? I said, I think so. Let's talk. And I said, so tell me about what you do and who you help. And he said, well, I can help anybody with any business problem. And the first thing I said to him was, that's your number one issue. That's why you only have 7 clients and you're only making $1,200 a month. He says, what do you mean? I said, you're trying to be all things to all people. He said, so what should I do instead? I said, well, you can't be a wandering generality. You got to be a meaningful specific. So let's narrow your focus. And I started to walk him through an exercise I do. And halfway through the exercise, he goes, hey, I'll work with doctors. He said, well, doctors are, they're great people. They help people. I go, yeah. He says, my dad's a doctor. I go, okay, that's great. He said, they also make a lot of money, right? And I'm like, okay, but if you're going after these guys just because they make a lot of money, that's not good. You want to go after somebody who really is someone you move to help. And say, hey, I'm going to do it. He got maybe 2 clients in the next couple months. So I went to him and I said, Dan, his name was Dan. I said, Dan, we gotta turn this around. We need a new niche for you. He says, okay. Narrow, right? Okay, cardiologist. I got a cardiologist. I'm like, why cardiologists? They make more money than doctors. I'm like, Dan, you're missing the point here. You're missing the plot. No, I'm going to do it. No cardiologist signed up. Well, what did happen, Mike, is he had a client that did sign up with him who was a Paralympian. He'd lost his leg in a childhood accident. His name was Papito Wilson. And the two of them did great work together. Like, they got along like peas and carrots. He helps this guy win medals at major international championships, including gold medals. And then he comes to talk to me and he said, Nicky, I owe you an apology. I go, what for? He says, well, you told me not to go after the money and I wouldn't listen to you. You were right and I'm wrong. I said, okay. He said, I'm not going to go after people just for the money anymore. He said, I want to go help people with missing limbs get fit. And the instant he said that, I'm like, wow, this is inspired. This is good. I think this can work. I said, you go for it, Danny. Okay, so Mike, he had 7 clients, right? I think I told you that. Within the next 6 weeks, he signed up 400 clients with no ad spend, purely on word of mouth.
Wow.
His income went up from $1,200 a month to over $100,000 a month by not going after the money.
Yeah.
Now, how's that possible? That's a good question, right?
I've learned in my journey the hard way, Nicky, that be careful what we wish for. There were times in my early business life where, we had to cover payroll every Thursday. So I looked through the lens of money. We need to bring in cash. And I was good at bringing in cash. That just brought the end of the month problem, which there's no profit in that cash because we're just doing deals. And then when I looked at increasing profit, I would fail at something else. It's like everything had an adverse effect. Every push for a specific key indicator resulted in a negative push on another key indicator. And I was running the business, changing my glasses, looking through different lenses based on what needed the most attention at that moment without looking at it from a 30,000-foot view. I used to fly airplanes. I'm a pilot. I'm not current anymore, but in my flying days, and when I was learning to fly, every pilot will experience this. There's 3 things that is drilled into you when you're training to be a pilot. And that is the 3 things that you always do, always, when you're in that cockpit. Aviate, navigate, communicate. And one of my ghoulish interests is reading NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, accident reports for commercial aviation tragedies, just to find out, what happened. And in almost every case, not all, but almost every case, at some point, something happened on board. The flight crew stopped doing at least one of those 3 things that always have to be done. They were trying to troubleshoot a problem. They stopped navigating, or they stopped communicating, or they stopped aviating. And I learned kind of the same lesson in business, that you can't just pay attention to one problem at the expense of the other. And I did that for a lot of years. And that sounds like, what you're saying there. It has to be holistic. It has to be the whole thing. We have to, in business, have our version of aviate, navigate, communicate the whole time. Does that resonate with your experience?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. And here's the thing with Dan, right? These clients that he signed up, nobody else at the time, things have changed now, in the fitness industry was trying to work with people with missing limbs. And their reasoning made logical sense. Well, they don't have all their arms and legs. They can't work out.
Right.
But Dan knew better. And his message wasn't, hey, I'm going to train you and help you lose weight and blah, blah, blah. His message was, you can do anything anyone else can do. And I'm here to show you how. And think of how powerful and visceral that message is for someone with a missing limb. Just put yourself in their shoes for a moment. You're probably not thrilled that they have one or more missing limbs. Probably wasn't their choice that would happen, right? And they're probably at least slightly resentful of the fact that life has given them this particular set of lemons. What Dan was showing them was that these lemons can be the source of lemonade. Beautiful, refreshing, ice cold lemonade. And you asked me, Nicky, what'd you learn on your entrepreneurial journey, man? I learned a lot about different aspects of business and things like what you said. My version of aviate, navigate, communicate. But the number one thing I learned is that business is fundamentally a human and people endeavor. And it's all about making a difference for your fellow man. There's nothing else. If your eye is on anything else but that as your lodestar, you may make a lot of money, but you're going to feel empty inside.
Yeah.
Empty. You're not going to feel like you're fulfilling the mission God gave you. And I want to just tell you, when Dan started working with these folks with missing limbs, there was a bounce in his step. There was a gleam in his eye. And it was way beyond, I'm making more money than I've ever made before.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that all the goals when one first starts a business or contemplates starting a business of success, perceived success, which is most of the time money, freedom, we don't obtain those by chasing those. I find that we can obtain those largely by making good, great decisions. They result in that. They're not the pursuit of that. Because if I wanted to pursue money, I can get money. That part's not hard at the expense of something else that will, kill the golden goose. So, yeah, I think your point's well made. Before starting eCircle Academy, just before you started your business, what were some of the pivotal moments that led you away from corporate life and toward entrepreneurship?
Great question. So, it's August 2001, and I was a director of sales for a IT security company. And I was about to book a flight to go to New York City. And one of the senior people in the company pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we're going bankrupt. Cancel your flights. This company's probably not going to pay you what it owes you." And I was shocked. Shouldn't have been. You should have kept an eye on what was going on, but I was shocked. And we did go bankrupt. And for several weeks and months, I kept looking for a job and I wasn't able to find a job. And then I found one of these contract jobs, the company I used to work with. And I was with them for a period of time. But it didn't quite work out, and I was out. And I was feeling low and down on myself. But I'd met the woman who would later become my wife. And one of her friends, a really nice lady, said, "So what are you thinking of doing?" I says, "Oh, I don't know, probably work in health and fitness." And she said, "Oh yeah, what would you do?" And, I was not really in the mood to talk, but, to be polite, I did. The next day, someone called me and said, "Hey, you Nicky?" I went, "Yeah." Said, "I hear you're a fitness coach. I need one. What do you charge?" I says, "Where'd you hear that from?" He says, "Oh, Kim told me." And Kim was the lady I was talking to. And that was my first client as an entrepreneur. That's really how my journey began. And within a year, I had a going concern of a business. It wasn't a hobby. You know what I mean? I was making enough money to feed myself and my family. And it was incredible. You know how earlier I told you my father taught me you need to believe in people. Well, sometimes you and I, we need people to believe in us. And that was the day someone believed in me. And it was a beautiful thing. I'm forever grateful to her for that.
So tell me about your company, eCircle Academy, and what's
Sure.
it about? What's its mission?
So we've got a mission like that. We want to create a huge constituency for free enterprise. And the way to do that is to help people get rich, right? To make a lot of money. So I got this vision that by 2040, there's going to be 1 billion multimillionaires on planet Earth. And I'm going to be a part of making that happen. I want to help 1,000+ people become multimillionaires. And why that number? Because it's enough money for someone to feel financially free. Now, there's more to freedom than money. You also need time freedom, health freedom, emotional freedom, intellectual freedom, and that's a whole conversation for another time. But if we create a strong constituency for freedom and free enterprise, then the forces of darkness and evil socialism aren't going to be able to take root. And that's what's important to me. So eCircle looks for people that share our philosophy of freedom-minded, heart-driven philosophy that are in business, but for whatever reason, they're stuck. They're on a plateau. They're not growing as fast as they want to, or maybe they're not growing at all. And our job is to show them how to grow, but also, and I mean this with all my heart, to love on them, to believe in them, to that whatever negative thinking is infecting them, whatever doubt is infecting them, gets washed away. Because the sooner that goes away and the sooner their energy vibration goes up and up. And there's a wonderful book called Power versus Force, which I recommend everybody get a copy of and read. Because this book will show you exactly where you are in terms of your dominant energy vibration. Are you in a destructive energy vibration or in a constructive one? And we're all about helping people get out of the destructive energy vibrations and into the constructive ones. That is the bottom line. And
Awesome.
we
And
show
for
people
my audience,
how to
by the
do
way,
all that.
For my audience, by the way, that maybe didn't catch that book's name, if you look in the show notes, I'll have a link to Power versus Source.
Force. Power versus force.
Force. Thank you. Power versus Force. Nicky's got his little like Oprah type book club going here, and that's one of them right there. So he'll turn that book viral. Was there ever a time, Nicky, when you doubted your decision to go out on your own, and if so, how did you push through that?
Honestly, brother, I never doubted the decision. I knew that I was meant to be my own man. Were there days where I thought, this is nuts? If you want easier to be working for someone else, absolutely.
You'd be a little nutty if you didn't think that, right?
Yeah,
clearly.
Absolutely.
Clearly.
But Mike, for me as an entrepreneur, the ability to decide what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, who I'm going to work with, who I'm not going to work with is very important. Very, very, very important. And that's more important than anything. There have been months and years where I haven't made a lot of money. But that's not why I got into this in the first place. I got into this for freedom. And there's months and years where we've made wonderful money. The beauty of entrepreneurship is doing something that makes you feel good about yourself. I feel good about helping good people win. I feel good about teaching them how to sell, because a lot of people are scared of selling. I feel good about teaching them how to handle objections, because a lot of people suck at that. I feel good about teaching people how to build a powerful personal brand, because a lot of people have no idea how to do that. I feel good about teaching people how to build IP, how to be seen as the go-to expert. I feel good about showing people how to be a guest on a podcast. I've been a guest since May 2022 on 830 plus podcasts.
Wow.
And why did I do that? I did it because I believe podcast guesting is a high-tech take on an old-fashioned idea, which is that one-on-one conversations like this result in relationships, friendships, partnerships, in business. That's been my experience.
Yeah,
Going on
I
shows
totally
has
agree.
helped me create, shows has helped me create lots of customer relationships, and has helped me create lots of friendships and lots of good collaboration opportunities.
When you said earlier, teach people how to sell, I think, at least in my case, maybe yours too, selling has different meanings to different people. The majority of people will hear the word selling and they think, okay, I got to give a pitch. I got to, come up with advantage A, advantage V, advantage C, overcome objection A, B, C. It's like it's a it's got a methodology to it. I think in many cases, at least in my world, selling is about providing value. It's about building authority and trust, and to connect on an emotional level, not a Me Too, braggadocious, chest-pounding ad that says basically we're the best, everyone else sucks, and we've got 1,000 awards and whatever. I really think it's about connecting on an emotional level. And the companies that have done that best, I think the poster child is like Nike. Nike sells shoes. They're a shoe company.
Yeah. Yep.
Keds, I grew up with Keds shoes. They're a shoe company. And the difference is, when's the last time you ever saw an ad from Nike that talked about their shoes? The comfort, the sole, the construction, the design, the durability, the style. Never. They celebrate athleticism, and they connect with people who also respect and celebrate athleticism, whether they're athletes or not. And they connect on an emotional level. They don't have to talk about shoes. They sell shoes. Of course, they build shoes. They don't talk about their product. And I think sometimes the best way to sell your product is stop talking about your product. Connect with the customer, provide value, become an authority, become an influencer. And I mean that in a authority-based way, not a TikTok twerky kind of influencer that we see today. Same word, different meaning. But I think that is how everyone will, quote unquote, sell in the future. But there's still a lot of people, most people are still hanging on to the conventional ways to sell, Mad Men approach to sell. And I really think that particularly with this younger generation, with millennials and Gen Zers and whatever's coming next, one might say their faces are always in screens, which is probably true, but it's not all TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat. A lot of it is they do their own work. They don't believe ads. Traditional ads. They like to do their own homework. They are influencer based, for better or for worse. And I think if we can get in front of potential customers by building authority and respect and trust, then selling is easy once we establish that level of authority. Does that resonate in your world too, Nicky?
Well, that story you told about Nike, I first heard Steve Jobs do it on a internal marketing session he did at Apple when he first came back in 1997. And he used the exact words that you did. Nike sells shoes. They're a commodity.
Right.
But they don't talk about shoes like Reebok or Adidas. They celebrate great athletes and they celebrate great athletic performances. And that's true. That's who Nike used to be. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, Nike's lost their way and they've become woke and anti-American, and they are not going in the right direction anymore.
Apple used to be a good poster child too, because Apple never talked about their computer. They celebrated creativity and creators and things like that. And now they've slipped into specs and, stuff like
Oh
that.
my God. Steve's been gone since 2011, right? He died 14 years ago. So in October 2011 is when he passed away. It really all comes from what I said at the beginning of the show, which is I'm grateful to be living in a free country. And I'm grateful to have been Napoleon Billou's son. And I see this as a land of opportunity. I don't see being an immigrant as a handicap. Frankly, I think the native born have a handicap compared to immigrants.
I agree.
Because we're the ones who see how incredible this is. And for them, this is just normal. For us, this is okay, let's go.
Right. What have been some of your biggest highs and lows in your entrepreneurial journey so far?
Well, this year, we had 2 instances where we enrolled some beautiful people into our programs. And we did it really by taking all the attention off of us and putting all the attention on them. So my sweetheart, Teresa, who I work with, went and created a personalized origin story song for every member of our community in July using AI. It was a song and a video with beautiful lyrics. And when she posted the song up for people to watch, it was the end of day 3 of 4 days of an intense in-person event and immersion. And what happened was people were tired at the end of day 3 and they wanted to go back to the hotel rooms. He says, no, I've made something for you. You guys got to watch this. And they're all grumbling. Okay, fine, we'll watch it. Just take 45 minutes. I'm like, 45 minutes, man. She plays the first song, and it's for one of the people in the room. And the energy goes from tired and grumpy to like electric. Because this is a song with very specific facts. And this song was good enough to be a top 10 radio hit. And this girl's watching it and she's bawling. Everyone else in the room's watching it, Mike, and they're bawling. All of a sudden, no one wants to go away. She went through all 10 songs. By the time that was all done, we had to kick him out of the room because we had to prep for the next day. Nobody wanted to leave. And the next morning, we had an enrollment opportunity for our annual mastermind, which is $40,000 a year. And we had some people in the room who were prospects for it. And 2 of them had told me, we're not signing up for your opportunity. They just told me flat out, we're not signing up. I'm like, all right. Mike, everyone signed up. 100%. 100% enrollment. And the 2 people who weren't going to sign up, when I sat with them and they say, okay, we're signing up. I said, what changed your mind? And they said, I know you care about me. And I need someone to have my back. And these 2 people, they have been crushing it ever since. Crushing it. They're both coaches. And man, they've each made over 6 figures in 3 months. So it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I think that
wonderful.
definitely falls into the category of crushing it. We talk about creating authority, podcast guesting, being a guest on podcasts, things like that.
Yes.
I'm sure many of your clients, I certainly did in my earlier days, struggle with imposter syndrome. How do you help them see their actual value and communicate that value with confidence?
Okay. So number 1 is we all have some level of imposter syndrome at some point in our lives. Okay. And if you go and you read Power versus Force, inside this book, there is something that will absolutely blow you away. Okay. There's this map of consciousness that basically talks about the various states in which human beings operate, all the way down here from shame, which is a 20 level vibration, and guilt, which is a 30, all the way up to reason, which is 400, love, which is 500, joy, 540, peace, 600, enlightenment, 700 to 1,000. Most people in North America typically vibrate at a level of between 100 and 175, which is in what's called the destructive range. See, the arrows are all pointing down, right? So if you're in pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, shame, which is where most people operate, you're going to be losing when it comes to going after your goals. You understand what I'm saying here, Mike?
Yeah.
And most people, the overwhelming majority of people in North America operate in this range. You need to break free, go to courage, which is right in the midpoint, and then to neutrality, where things don't bother you, and then willingness, acceptance, reason, love. When you start to get into these ranges, and I'm not here to pretend this is easy, because there's anything but easy to break your consciousness to get to that higher level, success effortlessly begins to flow to you. My goal in working with my people is to take them from here up to here. Because we all go through the gamut of these emotions. I mean, we could do something that makes us feel guilty, but do we live there? Let's hope not, because if you live in guilt, you're screwed. You're going to want to commit suicide after a while, right? But if you're living in between fear and anger most of the time, I got to break you first to pride, then to courage, and then all the way up here. My goal is to get everybody to love, and I come from love, and because my energy vibration in that space is love, I attract people wanting that. And we show people how to focus on this, because when the energy vibration goes up, and that is the number one thing you got to spend time on, then whatever actions you take, they will just naturally flow and result in beautiful things. Well, if you're coming from fear and you're making sales calls, no one's buying. No one's buying. If you're coming from anger and you're making sales calls, no one's buying.
Yep.
But if you're coming from love, like, everybody is thrilled to hang out with you. And they naturally want to buy from you. You understand that day when we went 6 for 6? When 2 of the people were a no before that day, why did they buy from us? Our energy vibration was at love and joy. And theirs was at fear. They wanted the love and joy. They wanted to be there. And being around us gave them access to that. And they started to raise their energy vibration. They were out of fear. And now they're operating at around 300. They're in like willingness, neutrality, and sometimes in love and joy. That's how come they're attracting all this money.
In my world, we build equipment that our customers put certain specific chemicals into so it can function. And so I have to know a little bit about chemistry. I'm not a chemist by any means, but I have to, I only know as much as it lands in my world. And there's if we have any chemical engineers in my audience, they'll be familiar with this. There's something called Hansen's Law of Solubility. And that is 3 simple words: like attracts like. And that's true in the chemical world, but it's exactly true, to your point, Nicky, that you lead with love, you attract love. You lead with confidence, you attract confidence. You lead with fear, you attract fear-based customers. And we led with anything but the higher octave attributes. And we attracted just what we wanted. We needed money. We were so desperate. We were on the edge for such a long time. We led with braggadocious advertising. We led with fear. We led with we got to get the sale now, even if we have to reduce the price. We led with wanting to beat our competitors. There was no win-win. I mean, a win-win for us was we won because we got the order, and we won again because they lost the order. I mean, we were terrible, and we attracted toxic customers.
That's terrible.
And we did that for a long time. And when we finally got the final, I refer to the business gods metaphorically. And, when the sledgehammer from the business gods played whack-a-mole with my head, finally, we just changed one day, just instantly changed our strategy. And we led unattached to the outcome. We're going to speak value. We're going to speak truth. We're going to provide education. If people buy from us, they buy from us. If they don't, they don't. It's okay. It's okay not to get the order. Less is more in some cases. And once we did that, we started attracting beautiful customers. And we love our customers. Our customers love us. We're a tribe they join. It's not transactional. They partner with us. So if there's a problem with the equipment, they don't beat us up over the head. They help us resolve the problem and prevent it for future customers. It's really a beautiful partnership. And really it started with where we led from. Like attracts like. You've said, I've heard you say this before, that clarity beats cleverness in messaging, which I find that's a fascinating comment. What does that clarity look like in practice?
Look, in our messaging, right, people ask me, well, who do you help? And I could get clever and go, well, we help entrepreneurs. But we really help expert-driven businesses. So folks that are coaches, consultants, guides, those kinds of people. And what do you help them do? You help them with their business. Okay, that's nice. But what I really help people do is I help them grow and scale. That's really my jam, right? I'm into helping you make more money. And there's people that they don't need help with that. Then they're not a good fit for me. And I'm not a good fit for them. Good messaging repels as much as it attracts. And a clear message will let people know whether they should talk to you or whether they should not talk to you. Both of those are very, very good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's one piece of advice, as we're starting to wind down now, what's one piece of advice you'd give to entrepreneurs who are maybe reluctant to fully jump into the deep end of the cold pool, to take the leap into the spotlight as thought leaders?
You know how they say AI is inevitable? You better learn something about it. I believe that to be true. I think someone who's trying to ignore AI is going to get flattened by it. I think developing a strong personal brand is also something that is inevitable. And if you ignore doing that, you're going to find your lunch being eaten by a business whose founder has developed a very powerful personal brand. So this ain't a nice to have. This isn't, I've got options, I got choices. It's kind of like oxygen. Start sucking on it.
Yeah, very good advice. And finally, Nicky, how did you define success when you first started your business, and how do you define it today?
When I first started my business, I just wanted to make money. I wanted us to be a going concern. Today, I still want us to be a strong business and a going concern that makes money. But more than that, I want us to make a mark. I want us to work with incredible people. I want to help them live life as the best version of themselves. The more people we can do that for, the happier I am.
Good answer. Nicky Billou, thank you so much. This has been great. And, there's two measurements of time. There's time, but as Einstein said, time is relative. And then there's podcast time. Podcast time goes by like that. We've been talking almost an hour, and it seems like we've been talking for about 10 minutes. But
yeah, it does.
There's just never enough time. I've got pages of questions that I wanted to ask you, but we'll have to do it again sometime. For my audience that wants to get more information on Nicky's company, that URL will be in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, just look down here somewhere, and that information will be there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, Look at the show notes when it's safe to do so, and we'll have that information there, as well as a reference to the book, a link to the book, Power versus Force, which I'm sure is an Amazon favorite. So I'll give the links to that as well. One of Nicky's, the Nicky Billou Book Club. So Nicky, thanks so much for being my guest today. Continued success with your journey, and I'm glad you made it out to the West. I think we are better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Same to you. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A special thanks to Nicky Billou for being my guest on the show. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And one favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe. Those two simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. You can also reach me directly at mike@reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com. And a very quick shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable.